I've always had certain inflamed joints or whatever it is. And I'll be like, trust me, start doing flushing and it's going to get better.
Yes.
And they can't connect the dots. And I'm like, listen, I know it sounds crazy, but when the liver functions, it creates the condition for everything else to work better in the body.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad that you are tuned in to the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show. I am so thrilled to bring health and wellness of a wealth of information to all the listeners that will hear this, that follow us currently, that are new to us. One, we just want to say we're thankful to have you. We're thankful to educate you. We're thankful to be with you upon the journey. I mean, it takes a village to seemingly get healthy in this crazy culture that we're living in. And today I have the good fortune of introducing a guy that I just met at the Weston A. Price Foundation a few months back. He flew all the way from London to do a talk because of his dedication and passion to wellness coaching. And his name is Adam Parker. Good morning, Adam. How are you this fine day, my friend? I think it's not actually morning where you're at.
Aaron, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's 3:00 in the afternoon here.
Nice.
And I'm looking out the window. It's starting to get dark. That time of year.
It is,
especially in the UK. Yeah.
I hate it when it gets dark early. I would like for it to be more sunny more often. So I think it's just...
Listen, I don't know if you've been to London, but sun isn't something that we're blessed with hardly ever.
It's interesting. Before we kind of get into, the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show podcast, we know that sunshine is a powerful remedy for health. How do you combat that?
It's a challenge, right? I mean, sunlight is not only energy, it's information.
Yes.
Right? You think about circadian rhythm and optimizing how we function. It's not easy. I mean, here's the deal. You don't necessarily need sunlight. You need to be out in natural light. But you combat it however you can. I mean, luckily we're in Europe, so I can be in Spain within half a day. I can be in Italy. That's the joy. We have access to all these different cultures and it's really accessible. So for me, I make sure I get out regularly and travel. But actually, and this is, you could call this controversial. I in the winter months, I will use a sunbed. Not sitting down, standing, because, not to have a tan, just to get access to certain spectrums of light that we just don't get access to. Again, if you go through the mainstream, it says, oh, if you get sunbed, you get cancer. But actually, anything
Small
coming out of
doses.
the mainstream is inverted. So you dig deep and actually, everything has a Goldilocks effect. Getting access to those types of frequencies or spectrums of light when you need it can be really beneficial. So I actually do sunbeds.
Well, I think in small doses, anything can be relatively of value, because it could be a form of eustress, which is a healthy form of stress, versus sitting in extremes where we get maybe distress. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I've actually in the winter times done things like that myself. I haven't done that in the last couple of years, but I don't have access to the beds as much just because I work out at the house and get that natural sunlight in the morning. So, but man, I'm excited to talk shop with you. I mean, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be, just so that I can introduce you to my audience, because I got I've been in practice almost 2 decades myself. So I've got a fairly amount of following that appreciates health and wellness. But, sometimes people like to know, what have you been through that woke you up to the health and wellness journey? And why are you going on a mission to, teach and coach and develop people to this wellness game?
Yeah, great question. So my story started 10 years ago when I was 30 years old. And what I will say, my mission is to educate and empower people in one pillar of health that I feel is very much underlooked. Many pillars to health: sleep, community, nutrition,
Sunlight,
gut health, sunlight. There's so many areas.
Right.
And I know enough in each area to bring it together. I'm not an expert in any of those areas, but I know enough. Where I am an expert in is detoxification. And that is the pillar that I think is very underlooked. And due to our modern condition, the environment we live in, the amount of toxins we're exposed to, and depending on your constitution, so, how robust are you, which there's many, and we can maybe talk about that, why someone is more robust than others, the world we're now living in, people are getting sicker and they're getting sicker younger. And all of these diseases are due to the chronic exposure to these man-made chemicals, radiation, all of these different touch points. So really,
Electromagnetic
my mission,
pollution, all that junk.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's my mission is to educate within that pillar of health because I think, there are many amazing experts in other areas. This, I
It's your
feel,
niche.
where we are in culture, we need to proactively focus on cleansing our bodies and also stopping the toxins coming in. So that's my kind of area of expertise. So in terms of how it all started, 10 years ago, working in London, doing the corporate. You guys call it corporate America. We don't really have a term for it here
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
UK, but corporate life,
Corporate UK.
corporate UK. They call it corporate Britain. We'll call it.
Yeah.
And what felt like overnight, but when you look back and connect the dots, it was slowly progressing. Like when I really think about, like, actually, well, my digestion was never great, even when I was a kid. But what felt like overnight at the time, I got all of these different symptoms that I just couldn't shake off. Anxiety. So it was normally low grade, but then there'd be moments where I was just really intense and I actually didn't know what was going on at the time because this is just before the narrative around mental health really took hold. So I just thought I was going crazy. I didn't know what anxiety was. I was like, I just feel really weird.
Yeah.
Um, Terrible digestive issues, feeling really low.
Now you
Kids
said you
call it
had digestive issues as a kid, though, right? So, like,
yeah.
what did that look like as a, now looking with hindsight is 2020? Like, what did it look like as a kid? Because I just wonder how many of our kids today that are suffering with obesity at over 50% of the United States, like, what kind of digestive issues are these kids having that they don't even realize are digestive issues?
Yeah. So it was indigestion, bloating, gas, um, just feeling sore stomach, sore tummy,
Yeah.
all of these things that I just thought, oh, it's just being a kid, not knowing it was building up to something bigger. Feeling sick, feeling low energy after food. So, and I just thought, oh, that's just life, and I remember distinctly eating food and then having a bad stomach, and then I would remedy it by eating more food that was like sweet food because I thought, oh, it might me feel better. Then you feel even worse. So yeah, that was my young boy, and there were a couple of times I had to go to the doctor because I had real bad stomach cramps. And back then, my wonderful parents doing the best job with the knowledge they had, we went to the GP or what you guys call the PCP, and they would prescribe, some suppressant of some sort. So it was always an issue. But then when I hit 30, everything just crashed down. So what happened to my digestion then? Couldn't digest food. I was pooping out food that wasn't digested at all. I mean, like
Oh my
literally,
gosh.
like
Yeah, not like corn
just
kernels.
nothing
Like
worked.
you were lettuce, meats. I mean, you just saw it on the other side.
Just undigested foods,
Yeah, it's
stools
terrible.
a different color, um, distension, gas, bloating, like everything just wasn't working. So really that then restricted me down to like a handful of foods. So that was going on. But the funny thing is, when you've got all of these issues and when you have the belief system, the mindset of give me the pill and let me crack on with my life, you will put up with a lot until it depends what you value most in life and what really got my attention. So I could deal with the anxiety because I would just drink more alcohol, right? Back then I was most Brits drink a lot culturally.
Hmm.
I don't drink at all now, but that back then I did. So if I drank more, the anxiety would go. Or I can't eat a lot of food, so if I just eat these foods, then I feel okay. So you have ways to just kind of deal with it. But the straw that broke the camel's back for me is when my hormones completely tanked. So I all of a sudden just lost my spark, my confidence, tired all the time, couldn't put muscle on in the gym, lost my desire to, interact with the opposite sex, put it that way. So I
Hmm.
had my blood work done and I had the testosterone of an 80-year-old.
Oh
So
my.
that got my attention. And I always remember being a young man, really a lot of my energy was put into, the opposite sex as a young man. So I knew I was like, right,
Something was wrong. Yeah.
this is not normal. Yeah. So that's what got my attention, right? All the other stuff I kind of put up with.
Isn't that interesting?
And then
There's
I thought,
always a straw that breaks the camel's back for people. So, not
mm,
to go, not to derail that thought. So hold that thought. But wouldn't it be nice if we could figure out how to, interrupt that cycle before it gets to that point, that breaking point? Because it's so much
yeah,
easier, I always say, to pull weeds out of the health garden than to knock down an oak tree of disease and
yeah,
diagnosis, right? And
yeah,
and so
100%.
like what Oh, well, if we bring it up, how would you interrupt that cycle for somebody that maybe just is new to
Mm.
this idea and they're putting up with, as you say, most of the problems? They haven't had that, face plant moment. How do we get them to
Yeah,
see?
yeah, yeah. It's a great question. And I think we live in the best time in history for those moments to take place. So when I got on well, Instagram wasn't a thing. Facebook was still, there weren't Facebook groups. It was still like, like tagging your friends on a night out type vibe, right? Uh, YouTube actually, YouTube was better then because now YouTube's censored, as in, not to go on another tangent, but
I
when
wish we
I was
could. We're
learning,
going to at some point over the course of our friendship. I know.
yeah, like, so back when I was learning coffee enemas, for example, there were people genuinely with a good heart trying to help people. Now, if you search for coffee enemas on YouTube, it's these kind of doctors in their scrubs trying to point their finger and talk down to you like, don't listen to those quacks. Like
Yeah,
it's that's what the algorithm now
is
delivers on
designed to
YouTube.
do.
But back then it was actual people trying to
Which,
be
by
good.
the way, folks out in social media land, that when you see that kind of belittling or condemning moment, recognize that that's exactly what you should be going toward. Go exactly against what they're telling you not to do. So if somebody's wagging their finger at you for doing a coffee enema or a water enema, you should follow the enema, and
Mm.
just because it's just so much health and wellness. And I do want to touch on that today as well.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, to add to that point, Aaron, everything's inverted. So if the mainstream media tell you to do X, you do Y.
Yeah.
That is the general gist. Like, you know, it's
I just
yeah,
saw a
once you
study just last week that came out. It was a headline actually that the
Mhm.
American Heart Association is poo-pooing intermittent fasting. And all the
Yeah, I saw.
all the comments and the tweets are going, and that's why I'm intermittent fasting, folks, because
Yeah.
and I will kind of just throw out there because it burns my butt that the American Heart Association has been around for 100 years this year, and
Mhm.
yet they are still losing the battle on heart disease as the number one disease killer in America. And I mean, how do you suck at your job and still remain number one in the industry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Uh to finish off on your point around, the awareness of, getting this information out there, I think it ultimately comes down to really belief, right? And we're run by our belief systems. And there's an awakening process when everyone who goes into alternative health, unless you're born into a family who are like 100% alternative. So, for example, my son is going to learn all this stuff as
He's
well.
only like a year
But
old,
my
right?
parents, he's a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But my parents were, my parents still, as much as, they see me, their son, spreading this message and helping people all around the world, they're still have a program of going to the doctor to some degree because it's a program. So there's an awakening and an unfolding that people have to go through. However, now there's the access of the internet. So people, especially the young kids, all of this information is pumped out on TikTok and Instagram. And depending on what you decide to focus your attention on, what you focus on expands. So if you're really into understanding true health, there's so much great content out today, more than ever. So where I had to go through trial and error to figure out what was the root cause of what's going on with me, and then creating and working it out over 5 years, you can now find, detox coach like myself. There's a couple of others out there that can shortcut your learning curve. So we're at the best time in human history for learning this information, for being awake to how health actually works. But again, the start point is, are you open? Because even though this information is widely accessible, most people don't think, right? And I take that, that's not me quoting that, uh
The
that's
hardest
from
thing to
Earl
do.
Nighting.
The hardest thing
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
in life is to think, and that's why
yeah,
so
yeah.
few people do it. And that's yeah, I think you're right. It's Earl Nightingale. Is that right?
Earl Nightingale said most people, I think he quoted, it was in his 30-minute recording, The Strangest Secret on
Yeah,
YouTube. Definitely watch that if
it's a great.
listeners, if you haven't. And he quotes someone saying, um 95% of people don't think, 3% think they think. Um, I can't remember the quote, but basically, people, we get programmed into certain belief systems, and and here's the thing: the only reason I changed my belief system is because I got sick.
That's right.
And hand on heart, if I didn't, would I have changed? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I've always been a curious guy. I've always wanted to learn stuff, but
Well,
it took my kind of awakening and understanding in this whole area because I it was a necessity. I had to.
Well, I think, if we're truth seekers, then we'll always be curious enough to continue to test an idea, and ideas come. And so, one of the things that attracted me to you, Adam, in your talk was one, the conversation of detoxification. There was a whole list of things to go and listen to, but as a functional medicine practitioner myself and doing, doctorally work with patients for 20 years, I have always been a proponent of detoxification from day one. And so, one of the things, though, people would say is, well, why would you go to a detox class? I said, because,
Yeah.
repetition is the mother of all skill. I teach patients 42 days a year of detoxification, not because they don't need more or they maybe they could get away with 21 days, but because I need them to hear and the repetition of putting themselves into this space where the body can catch up and do some old paperwork.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was attractive to me, I wanted just to see what you would say. And I was really excited because I think I met somebody that is as aggressive with detoxification as I am. I think you've done like over 100 different types of, liver flushes, for example. And, so many people in my world, they haven't done fruits and vegetables fast or juice feast or coffee enemas or gallbladder flushes or liver flushes. So like, what was your first, liver flush, and did it work? So that way you can maybe share with the idea that even a little bit of detoxification could go a long way.
Yeah, for sure. So, a lot of people, an argument I always see in the DMs is detox is nonsense. We don't need to detox. Our body does it naturally. And I agree with that statement. If we lived in the environment that we're designed to live in.
Yeah, like the Garden of Eden.
Exactly right. We live in a very toxic environment today. Over 80,000 synthetic chemicals released in the last 50 years. The electrosmog we're exposed to. I mean, we're under more stress. Our food is nutrient deficient. There's a lot going on that creates the perfect condition for the body to get unwell. All of the modern medications. There's a whole host of things. So really, detox is just assisting the body in what it's naturally doing. Because here's the thing: if there are more toxins coming in than going out, we're going to eventually have a buildup of toxins, and that buildup then stops the body from doing what it needs to do. The body is a self-healing mechanism. The body knows, right? We are part of nature. I believe God flows through us. The body knows what to do, but due to the modern condition, the body is hindered. Yeah, exactly. It gets jammed up, doesn't know how to heal. So all we're doing is we're not healing the body at all. We're just creating the space for the body to do.
Well, it's interesting. I had a veterinarian in my office the other day, and I believe that her, kid needs to do a flush because he's basically malnourished. And interestingly, a kid that's over 6 foot would probably be closer to 200 pounds, 180 pounds at least, and this guy was 110 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And so at the end of the day, the mom was having a hard time wrestling with the idea that the kid needed to detox. And I told her the exact same thing you said. I said, look, there's nothing wrong with your liver. There's nothing wrong with your kidneys, especially at 18 or 19 years old. But at the end of the day, it does need a little help. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And also think, I'm 40 and I got my first mobile phone when I was 17, 18, right?
Yeah. So yeah, me too.
I feel so blessed because I didn't have any of those frequencies and exposure. Because again, it is a toxin as much as smoking is a toxin. We can't smell, taste it, or touch it, right, or see it, but it's still a toxin. So with now our young kids, they have more chemicals in the environment, they have more everything. So ultimately, they're going to accumulate toxins at the same pace as adults do, and may run into certain issues. And back to your previous question, when I first did a liver flush myself, now if you want to do a liver flush, again, the beauty of social media, there's loads of Facebook groups and content online, and to give you a general steer. I will say, like just a side note, with these Facebook groups, be really careful about because it's the blind leading the blind in a lot of these things. So
Yeah.
use it where useful. But there are communities of people who are going through the same experience. When I first discovered liver flushing, I saw a couple of YouTube videos of Andreas Moritz. I bought the book, I read the book, and I was like, right, I better do it then. Didn't have any support. I remember doing it thinking, I've just bought this random book on the internet and I'm about to drink this all, and I was like, I hope this works out. Whereas the good news now, there are communities, I even do a free PDF handout of the protocol because it's open source. So that's the good news now. There's so much information and you can find your people. So yeah, I've done way over 100 of these flushes. Now you don't need to do over 100. I've done so many because, this is what I do and I'm always experimenting. I'm like the mad scientist, always playing around with different formulas. But it's very beneficial for anyone. Why do we need to do these liver flushes? Because a lot of these toxins that are man-made, the body doesn't know how to process these toxins. Now, some people have a better detoxification ability than others, but we still struggle to detoxify these toxins. So what can happen is these toxins land in the liver, and normally the liver goes through phase 1 to phase 2 detox, turning fat soluble toxins into water soluble toxins, and then that goes into the bile and then into the stool. With these toxins that are man-made, most people are now struggling to break these toxins down. So the liver just encapsulates these toxins in these bile salts and these cholesterol salts for safekeeping. So right, okay, we don't know what to do here, so we're gonna tuck it away for safekeeping because the body's always trying to keep things out of circulation.
It's kind of like a biofilm, but it's for toxins instead of a bug.
Exactly. And over time, more toxins, more buildup, more storage. We get to a point where the liver's now more of a storage unit than actual doing a liver or doing liver function. And the liver does over 500 different functions, not just detox.
Well, I've heard it's even higher than that. It's like 1,600. Is it? Well, and I think you and I both agree that it's probably involved in every function of the body. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you need your brain, you need your heart, you need what part of the watch tells time, all of it. But everything is manufactured or processed somehow involving liver function.
Exactly. It's connected to everything. So
now if you put a bunch of these little bile salts, accumulated toxins everywhere, now it's like trying to navigate a dirty kitchen.
And you'd be surprised when I get people going through cleansing in my program, they do not associate certain things with liver health. Like, oh, I've always had a lower back issue, or I've always had a certain inflamed joints, or whatever it is. And I'll be like, trust me, start doing flushing and it's going to get better.
Yes.
And they can't connect the dots. And I'm like, listen, I know it sounds crazy, but when the liver functions, it creates the condition for everything else to work better in the body.
Beautiful.
It's not just about, I can detox better from the junk food I've eaten or whatever. So,
but it's skin. It's waking up at night to pee, deep sleep. You know what I mean? Like, gosh, like the liver does throw off a bunch of energetic disruptors, and I think that's the white flag saying, help, mayday, mayday, we got an issue in sector 6. You know what I mean? We've got to we got to wake up to the fact that if you have symptom patterns that you weren't genetically born with, then you potentially are a candidate for liver flushing.
Yeah. If I'm honest, I think everyone's a candidate.
Well,
Um,
yes.
you know,
If you can
I don't
fog
think
glass.
yeah, I don't, here's the thing. I think, we kind of mentioned constitution earlier. You will get the 80-year-old granny smoking in her 80s and absolutely crushing it, right? But again, you gotta look at the differences in the individuals. So,
Their upbringing.
and so yeah, this is what Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, the author of the GAPS diets, talks about. It's the upbringing. So you've got to look at, firstly, there is a genetic component, which you can always do DNA testing. You then have to look at the microbiome passed on by the mother. Now, as we are more and more toxic, and we all of us have leaky gut, each new baby born has
More
uh,
we could get.
you know less microbial diversity than the last generation. So there's what microbes you're born with. It's how you delivered. If you're C-section, there's a limitation there. How many antibiotics and other medications did you receive as a child? What was your diet like? Where did you live? So the granny smoking into her 80s might have been born naturally, not had many medication. I mean, really, if you're that old, antibiotics weren't really a thing. Grown up on organic food because that's all there was. Lived in a low EMF environment because that's all there was. So you can see, and then if they had good genetics on top of that, you can see, okay, cool. Okay, I get it. I get why she's absolutely
You're
crushing it.
literally
At 80,
describing my
you know?
uncle. My uncle lived on a garden. He raised his own crops, had his own chickens, but he smoked unfiltered cigarettes. But he drank water in those days 150 feet deeper than the average well in the area so he could get better quality water because he understood water and he understood soil.
Mhm.
Now, apparently, didn't understand the
Yeah.
smoking game, but to your point, because he lived a different lifestyle, this dude was still, doing gold mine searches in his, late 70s. That means that's
Yeah.
rock hole climbing and trees and digging holes and labor. You know what I mean? Where like
Mhm.
that's the grandma in their 80s that seemingly has this constitution that can. But, for every person we find like that, there's 99 other people in our culture that are deranged and infertile and lethargic and like you said, like no sex drive.
Yeah. And that's the modern condition that we face. And to replicate, was it your uncle? Did you say
Yeah.
to replicate his lifestyle? It's tough now because it's hard to avoid EMF exposure, even if you live in rural areas. It's hard to get access to that level of quality water. Amazing that he understood soil because that is the foundation.
He was a real
Because
farmer.
yeah, right. Because ultimately the soil will determine the quality of the food and what we eat and our nutrition. So
It's interesting
so
because
that
you've a
that
couple,
lifestyle is hard to replicate.
you and I could go 1,000 different directions. And it is, I think, interesting. Several times you brought up this idea of electromagnetic pollution. They talked a lot about at the Weston A. Price, that kind of the theme that I picked up is how, bioelectric we are. And I get it. And then I was at this other seminar in Florida just a few weeks back, and they too were talking about quantum entanglement and how
Mm-hmm.
the amount of EMF that we're exposed to today, and we don't appreciate it because we can't see it. How do you tangibly help people recognize the negative impacts of EMF, and how does that like relate to needing to do a liver flush?
Yeah. It's a funny thing because when I work with anyone, I really hammer home about EMFs. And you'd be surprised when I I'll exclude the Western A Price conference where we met, but other conferences I go to, I'm shocked the amount of people in the health game who, are having their phones in their pockets or the smart watches on. And I understand because it's pumped in culture. Just psychologically,
Hmm.
we are, if we don't think it through, we have a herd like mentality. Everyone's doing something, so it's okay. But when you look at the data, I mean, it's frightening how bad these things are. So for me, I took a stance years and years ago. I haven't had my phone in my pocket for years.
Is that why you also
Absolute
use
years.
the antennas in your ears like that? Because I think the tubal, they don't transmit EMF.
Yeah, that exactly. I mean, these aren't the best. These aren't the tube ones, but I always have EMF protection. So this is actually these guys were exhibiting essential energy.
Uh huh.
These are really cool.
Those are those little cool
Ma-
plates where they have like the multiple plates, and you can like
Yeah,
hit like a 3,000 foot radius or something.
some cool stuff. Um, so that's the thing. You can't see it, you can't smell it, taste it, touch it. Phones are insanely empowering, right? I mean, look, we are having this conversation because of technology.
Yes. It's pretty
But
awesome.
people, yeah, man, it's really cool. But people don't see the downsides to it. So that's something I really hit home. And again, I'm always surprised how many people have their phone next to them when they sleep. And it's I love it when I say just put it outside the room, and then the next
Well,
day, oh my
okay.
goodness,
Let's
I
go to
slept so.
confession time. Let's go to confession time, Mr. Adam. Here we go. So, have you heard of a Whoop app?
Yeah, yeah, of course, it would,
So,
or yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I used for an entire year. I bought a subscription, and I had a Whoop app on my left arm. And as you can
Mhm.
tell, I still have currently the watch. But let me just tell you like what I've noticed. Okay, so I wore this thing tethered to a leash, as you can imagine. I literally have had it off for 30 days because the subscription was running out January 3rd. And I just, I was like, this thing ain't really helping me. And if anything, it's probably more of a cumbersome thing. And no disrespect to the company, okay? I mean, it's just it's the concept of what you just said, smart technology attached to our body.
Yeah.
But for the last literally 3 weeks, and I was telling you know, like if I take my shirt off, at some point I'm gonna be okay knowing that I don't even conceptually know I don't have a shirt on. I
Mhm.
can
Yeah.
still feel the leash, even though it's not on my arm. Even and I feel almost naked, and it's
Mm.
very bizarre. Like I haven't adapted yet to it not being present. And I've been confiding
Mm.
with the idea of getting rid of my watch because I like the features that it gives me on the fly. It's just like you said,
Yeah.
the cost of technology we don't appreciate or that we put up with. And but interestingly, you bring that up because I literally can feel
Mm.
the app's technology buzzing me. And I wonder for the last year, how much did it absolutely change biologically my bioelectric system, and my system is like going through withdrawals, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the they're really empowering these tools, and they are tools. I have an Aura ring. I don't wear it at all. If I was to wear it, it would be on flight mode, Bluetooth off. When I was asleep, I don't really wear it at all. And here's the thing with like the Apple Watch, I never bought one, and the reason because I knew like don't get me wrong, if I had to wear it and test it out, I would see so many things that I would love using it for. I
Mm-hmm.
know like it would be like oh my god, this is so more convenient, so much more convenient. This is amazing. But I also know the downside of having those things exposed on my body the whole time. So I just never did it. Now here's the thing: there are people that have never really had a smartphone, and they don't need a smartphone. They're like I never had one, don't need one. I can't get rid of my smartphone because it's so convenient and I get so much done with it. So that's why I never jumped into the smartwatch realm. And I get it, it can be difficult. I've got so many clients who I've got one client who uses her she because her husband gets up at a different time and she uses her smartwatch to vibrate to wake her up so she doesn't wake up her husband.
Oh,
And I'm
nice.
like, that's such a genius invention. I said to her, but as
But
good as
what's it
that is,
costing
it's
you?
still not good for your health. Yeah, it's still not good for your health. So that's the thing. Once you get used to these different kind of uses, it's hard to let it go. But the data is so it's so obvious that these things cause issues on so many levels, and these frequencies are ubiquitous. They are everywhere. Um,
Well, I
you
just
know,
definitely know that it's just something I've observed. But I guess like in some respects, how would a person know that the EMF is causing them a trouble? And then
yeah.
how would liver detox, or liver flush,
Oh yeah.
effectively change that for them?
Yeah. Go, yeah, sorry, just steering back on point there.
It's all right. It's all
So
right.
in terms of how does someone know whether EMS are causing them issues? Well, it impacts all of us, but it's just whether we notice it. I've got a client who recently got back from he went and lived in the Dominican Republic for a month working, entrepreneur, and he was like, I felt amazing. And I've come back to England and I'm just feeling a bit crap again. I said, listen, it's probably because you were living on a beach, barefoot walking, sunrise, sunset, and now you're in a high-rise flat in the UK, surrounded by Wi-Fi routers. So how do we know it's, are you getting more tired? Do you get headaches? Do you feel lethargic? It's all of these signs of just not feeling vital is probably the easiest way to see if EMFs are impacting it. Basically, as the Western Aid Prize Conference, one of the main messages we live in an electric world, right? We
Yeah.
are electromagnetic beings. And when you have man-made frequencies that don't align with what we're used to, it just causes us to it lowers our life force
Yeah.
in essence. Now, let's look at liver cleansing. So this is really interesting. As we accumulate toxins, so what sort of toxins do we accumulate? Well, we talked about EMS being invisible, but we accumulate uh, chemical solvents, we accumulate heavy metals,
Mm.
and also another, like the third toxin, which um, really needs to also be kind of brought to our awareness, are the toxins we create, the metabolic
Just the
waste.
natural stuff.
Uh, yeah, histamines. Like we actually, when you go to a supermarket and you buy food for the week, you don't eat everything. Like you might cut the stalk off your broccoli, throw that away. Like there's waste from just how our body's functioning as an operating system. So to all of these different toxins. Now, when our livers are congested, people tend to have many symptoms. One of them is electromagnetic sensitivity. So why is that? Well, it's because you have more um, toxins in your body that are able to connect with certain frequencies. So heavy metals, right? They resonate with certain frequencies now pumped through our atmosphere,
Would that be the
and people
person
can
that
have
like touches a computer or a piece of technology and it like blows up the computer or something? The mouse
it
stops
literally blows
working.
blows it up. That I mean that's probably the extreme end, or all the way down to a bit of a headache. But yeah, it's everything, right? It's can't be in in a crowded room because you just feel sick
Or
or
bright
dizzy,
lights.
bright lights. So that's when you're more basically when you're more chemical or electromagnetic sensitive. When you start doing liver flushing, you can change the game. There's for the listeners, they should check out, and you should have this lady on your show actually, Aaron. She's a good friend of mine. Her name is Elizabeth Wells.
Okay.
She calls herself the liver flush queen. So Elizabeth, really compelling story, basically born unwell. She's done over 300 liver flushes, knows her stuff in the liver flush game.
You bet. I'm in.
And
Miss Wells, I want
yeah,
her on my show. So
yeah.
I
So
need you to help me
she,
make that connection. That'd be awesome.
for sure, my man, I'll make it happen. She, and she'll tell the story better when you have her on, but she had to wear this kind of EMF protection hat when she would go to work because if she didn't wear it, she would feel sick and have loads of symptoms. And when she started liver cleansing, that went away. So you could argue that when
Hmm.
we open up the liver to do what it needs to do, it can function better, it can detoxify better. And all of these stored heavy metals will eventually start to naturally leave the body when you give it the right conditions. Now, obviously, some of them you need to do a bit more heavy lifting, and that can be through some heavy metal chelation. But in general, she just through liver flushing, she went from having to wear these like EMF protection, what do they call it, like Faraday cage type hats,
Essentially, yeah.
to not wearing it at all, just through liver flushing. So again, you're creating the right condition for the body to thrive when the liver is functioning correctly.
So again, guys, Adam and I could talk about liver flush and detox every which way to Sunday. And I think it was really awesome to see just the natural evolution to see that electromagnetic stress is a real issue. Grounding's important, sunlight's important, structured water, as Adam is drinking out of in London right now, is important. Liver flushing's important. There are multiple angles for which we go and create an environment for the body to thrive. And when we detox, you are giving your body life. You are giving your body energy. You're giving your body an opportunity to reset and become more revitalized so that you can be everything that God's made you to be. And Adam and I's journey is to share that mission with you. And so, Adam, for this segment of our show together, What final words can you share with our listeners? And then, of course, I want you to tell us, how we can subscribe to your day in the life of with Adam, which I think is legit, and your podcast and stuff like that. But like, give us just on this subject of making these strides to recognize toxins are with us and liver flushing is important. Like, go for it.
Sure. So I think it's important just to acknowledge that detox can be a tool that can really empower you, right? So it's really common that somebody's got something they're dealing with health-wise, whether they decide to suppress it with medication or whether they're being a bit more proactive in solving it. Detoxification, whatever you're doing, so whether you're eating better and you're working out, that's great, but adding detox to your arsenal of things to help you get better will only elevate your journey. And liver flushing, as there's no magic bullet, or liver cleansing is probably one of the biggest heavy hitters in moving you down the line in that process of detox. So there's many things, and I'm sure we'll jump into other areas on future shows, but
Oh, you
definitely
betcha, my brother.
definitely look into liver cleansing, because that can be something that can move the needle pretty substantially.
We call it the Stephen Covey leadership world, the big rocks first. How can we make the biggest dent with as little effort as possible?
That's the one, man.
Well, tell us how can my listeners get a hold of you and also subscribe to your channel, because, guys, I want to just set him up because he's got book reviews. He interviews great leaders and movers and shakers in the field, not just in detox, but even in how we think, or, and just he has a mission, again, to not just change the cells, but even change the way our thinking happens. As he said earlier, people don't think, very few people realize that they're thinking and not thinking. So he's helping people become more aware.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I really enjoyed it. People can connect with me on Instagram. My tag is @IdealDayAdam. And I also have a podcast called The Ideal Day Podcast, where, again, I talk about detox and everything I love. So health, wellness, mindset, really important.
Really?
So they can check out the podcast as well.
Well, thank you again for being on this segment, my brother. And I look forward to when we get to do this again. It's always going to be a good fun time, because I think you and I have a lot to share with people. So God bless you, my man, and thanks for today.
Thank you, brother.
Guys, I want to say thank you too on the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show. Truth, wellness, one bite at a time, making that little shift, as Adam was talking about, moving the needle 1 degree in the right direction is the next right step for you. And so I'm glad that you're tuned in. So share the show. We can't wait to air the show. We are just thrilled to bring you the best of the best in health and wellness across the globe. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, listeners. We'll see y'all next time on the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show.